What happens when one of Hollywood's most powerful studio heads quietly decides that a celebrity is no longer welcome in her world? What happens when ambition collides with authority, and a request that seems innocent on paper sparks one of the most shocking professional rejections in recent Hollywood history? For Meghan Markle, the stakes were higher than ever. She wasn't just pitching a film or a series. She was asking for free space. A literal slice of Hollywood power at Amazon MGM Studios, a chance to produce her own projects under her own terms. And when she walked into the studio, confident, poised, expecting the room to bend for her name alone, she had no idea she was about to walk straight into a storm. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine it. The lights of the studio gleaming, the hum of executives moving in the background, the air charged with anticipation. Meghan, dressed impeccably, enters, every step measured, a small smile playing across her face. She greets a few assistants politely, nods at a few producers she knows only by reputation, and then makes her way into the office of Jennifer Sock, a name that carries weight in Hollywood. A woman who has built her empire not by charm alone, but by decisiveness, discipline, and the quiet force of power that makes even seasoned executives hesitate. This was a woman who knew the game, who understood the stakes. And Meghan, ambitious, poised, bold, believed she could play it and win. But what she did not anticipate was the wall of resistance waiting for her. Jennifer Sock had heard the whispers, seen the headlines, and understood the implications of what Meghan was asking. Free space to produce her own films. In essence, a carte blanche inside one of Hollywood's most lucrative production studios. To the casual observer, it might have seemed like a reasonable ask for someone of Meghan's fame and previous experience. But in reality, it was unprecedented, audacious, and dangerous. Because in the corridors of Amazon MGM, power is carefully calculated, reputations are guarded, and no one, not even a former royal with a global following, gets a free pass without scrutiny. The meeting started politely. Meghan laid out her vision, her projects, the scripts she wanted to produce, her ideas for feature films and documentaries. Every word was polished, every sentence rehearsed. But as she spoke, the room felt colder than she anticipated. The polite nods of the assistants felt like mild deflection. The occasional furrowed brow of the producer across from her spoke volumes. She sensed tension. She felt it growing with every minute, like a storm slowly rolling in from the horizon. Jennifer Sock listened quietly, her expression unreadable. The executives around her murmured occasionally, taking notes, exchanging subtle glances. And then came the moment that Meghan may never forget, the quiet but unmistakable shake of Sock's head. A small, almost imperceptible gesture, but to Meghan it was as if the entire room had shifted. In the world of Hollywood, gestures speak louder than words. That single shake said it all. Disapproval, rejection, and a silent declaration that this request would not just be denied, it would be remembered. What followed was polite, measured language, but the message was clear. Sock explained the reasoning: studio priorities, brand alignment, resource limitations, and precedent. Every excuse was couched in professional terms, yet the undertone was unmistakable. Meghan was being blacklisted. Not through headlines, not through public announcements, but through the quiet, invisible power of one of the most influential figures in Hollywood. A decision made in whispers and closed doors, one that could alter the trajectory of Meghan's career entirely. Why does this matter now? Because this isn't just about Meghan Markle. This is about the intersection of celebrity, ambition, and authority. This is about what happens when someone who has never had to face true gatekeeping comes up against the ultimate authority in her field. Jennifer Sock didn't make this decision lightly. She is a woman who has navigated power, shaped the future of studios, greenlit some of Hollywood's most successful projects, and rejected others with ruthless precision. Meghan's request wasn't just ambitious, it was audacious. And in Sock's view, audacity in the wrong hands is dangerous. The implications are staggering. For Meghan, this rejection is more than a professional slight. It's a public lesson, a moment that reveals the limits of fame when it meets industry power. For Hollywood, it's a reminder that no matter the headlines, no matter the Instagram following, authority still matters. Studios like Amazon MGM operate not on sentiment, but on strategy, profit, and brand protection. And for the public, this story reveals the unseen machinations of the entertainment world, where decisions are made quietly and reputations can be shaped or shattered with a single meeting. Insiders report that the fallout from this meeting began almost immediately. Whispers in the hallways of Amazon MGM, late-night emails between executives, speculative calls to agents. Every corner of the studio seemed to vibrate with tension, every executive wondering how someone like Meghan Markle, with all her influence, could be quietly but firmly pushed aside. The industry took notice. Headlines did not yet capture the full drama, but insiders knew that something seismic had occurred. A celebrity who was accustomed to open doors and eager assistance had just hit one of Hollywood's hardest walls. What makes this story even more compelling is the human element. Meghan Markle is not just a celebrity. She is a figure who has constantly navigated intense scrutiny, high expectations, and public judgment. Her ambition is undeniable, her vision clear, yet the very qualities that drive her success can also make her vulnerable in environments where power is centralized and decisions are not swayed by fame. Jennifer Sock represents that power, the kind that doesn't bend to notoriety. The contrast is stark. Meghan, accustomed to public adoration, facing Sock, whose reputation is built on authority, control, and a refusal to be swayed. And then there is the question of timing. Why now? Why this meeting? Why this request? Sources suggest that Meghan's Hollywood ambitions have been simmering quietly, with discussions about independent projects, documentary pitches, and feature films gaining momentum. She wanted a platform that would give her full creative freedom, something few studios would ever consider granting. Her vision was bold, perhaps too bold. And in Hollywood, boldness is a double-edged sword. It can propel careers forward, or, in a single moment, shut doors forever. Imagine the scene afterward. Meghan leaving the meeting, a mixture of disbelief and frustration, trying to process what just happened. Meanwhile, inside the studio, the executives are already preparing the narrative. How to contain the information, how to prevent leaks, how to manage the delicate balance between celebrity influence and studio control. Behind closed doors, this decision was discussed, debated, and ultimately enforced. Blacklists in Hollywood aren't always public, but their effects are immediate and far-reaching. They touch every corner of a career, from funding opportunities to casting calls, and even public perception. This is why the story resonates. It's not merely a tale of rejection. It's a story about power, control, and the unseen rules that govern one of the most glamorous yet ruthless industries on the planet. It's a lesson in hubris and authority, ambition and limitation. For viewers, it offers a peek behind the velvet curtain, a look at the forces that shape the careers of the famous, and a narrative that is equal parts suspenseful, dramatic, and emotionally charged. And as the day ended, and the lights of Amazon MGM Studios dimmed, one thing was certain. This meeting was not the end of Meghan Markle's story in Hollywood. It was, however, the beginning of a new chapter, one fraught with challenges, whispers, and consequences that no one, not even Meghan, could fully anticipate. She entered the room thinking she could charm everyone. Confident, polished, with that signature Meghan Markle poise, she believed her name alone would open doors. But confidence, no matter how genuine, can sometimes be dangerous. Especially when it walks straight into a room dominated by experience, authority, and invisible hierarchies. This was not just any room. This was Jennifer Sock's office at Amazon MGM Studios, the heart of a sprawling entertainment empire. And what Meghan wanted was unprecedented. Free space within the studio, a green light to produce her own films, and permission to operate with autonomy few in Hollywood ever receive. The mini-hook is simple but unavoidable. Imagine walking into a room, expecting applause, only to find a wall of silence and a subtle but firm shake of a head signaling that your dream might be denied. That is exactly where Meghan Markle found herself that day. The room was meticulously organized, sterile yet elegant. Massive screens hung on the walls, showing current MGM projects and market analytics. Behind the large mahogany desk sat Jennifer Sock, composed, observing. Every gesture, Every movement in the room was calculated. Meghan approached, her heels clicking lightly on the polished floor, her smile confident yet carefully measured. She greeted Sok warmly, and there was a polite nod from the executives surrounding the room. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Meghan began her pitch, laying out her vision. She spoke about scripts, production plans, potential actors, and even marketing strategies. Every sentence was rehearsed, polished, intentional. She was not only selling ideas. She was selling herself as a powerhouse producer, someone who could bring fresh stories to a studio hungry for content in the cutthroat streaming wars. Her voice was calm but passionate, her words infused with conviction. And yet, as she spoke, she noticed subtle signs of disapproval. An eyebrow raised here, a slight pause there, the occasional glance exchanged between the other executives. These were not mistakes or mere coincidences, they were silent signals. Signals that told her, in a language she might have only subconsciously understood, that her ambition was being questioned, that her request, bold as it was crossing lines she had not yet identified. Jennifer Sok finally spoke. Her tone was calm, professional, almost gentle, but beneath the veneer was steel. "Meghan," she said, "we appreciate your vision, your creativity, and the passion you bring. But your request is unprecedented. And it's complicated." Her words were chosen carefully. Each one measured, each one deliberate. To anyone unfamiliar with the subtle power plays of Hollywood, it might have seemed polite. To those who understood, it was the first strike, the precursor to the blacklist that was quietly taking shape. Meghan pressed on, trying to navigate the conversation. She reiterated her plans, emphasized her commitment, even hinted at the publicity benefits of allowing her independent creative space within the studio. She spoke of potential awards, critical acclaim, the brand prestige of Amazon MGM aligning with her vision. She expected a counteroffer, a compromise, perhaps even cautious optimism. But it never came. Instead, the room grew heavier with tension, a quiet storm building just beneath the surface. And then came the subtle gestures that would haunt her later. The careful notes taken by the assistants, the almost imperceptible frown, the way Sok leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers. This was a professional calculus at its finest. No one in that room made decisions on sentiment alone. Every movement was a data point, a signal, an unspoken evaluation. Meghan was being measured, assessed, and ultimately judged. The executives whispered quietly among themselves, discussing studio priorities and precedent. What had Meghan not considered? That asking for free space within Amazon MGM was not just a request, it was a challenge to the system. A request that undermined the authority of the studio, the structure carefully maintained by Sok and her team. And the consequences were immediate. Her ambition, once seen as a potential asset, was now being reframed as audacity. Overreach, a risk the studio could not afford. As the meeting drew on, Meghan tried a final appeal. She spoke about her previous experience, her understanding of audience engagement, and her ability to create content that resonated globally. She spoke of her brand, her reach, and her credibility. Each word was a calculated effort to turn the tide. But the responses were measured, neutral, and increasingly constrained. It was clear, this was not going to be a negotiation. This was a verdict in the making. Insiders reveal that the room, while outwardly professional, was simmering with tension. For the executives, this was about more than one celebrity asking for space. It was about precedent. Allow one person such autonomy, and the floodgates could open. Amazon MGM could no longer maintain a consistent, controlled environment. Decisions would be challenged, negotiations would be pressured, and the very culture of the studio could be destabilized. To Jennifer Sok, a woman known for decisiveness, this was unacceptable. And so, quietly, without a public statement or dramatic confrontation, the blacklist began to take shape. Not in the headlines, not in tabloids, but in whispers. In subtle communications between executives. In the quiet reassurances to other producers that no one, not even Meghan Markle, would receive such concessions. It was the invisible power of the studio asserting itself, a force that few could resist. And for Meghan, who had navigated the media spotlight, public opinion, and fame, this was a confrontation unlike any she had faced before. What makes this chapter fascinating, even for those who do not follow Hollywood closely, is the human element. Ambition versus authority, fame versus structure, confidence versus experience. Here was a woman used to doors opening at her name, finding herself in a room where the rules were not her own, where authority was absolute, and where rejection was not personal, it was systemic. It was the subtle, quiet lesson of Hollywood. No matter how bright your star, there are forces at play far greater than your visibility or public support. And yet, there is another layer. Sources close to the meeting hint that Meghan may have underestimated not just SOC, but the network of alliances within Amazon MGM. People who had observed her previous dealings, who had evaluated her reputation, who had assessed the potential impact on other productions. The decision to deny her request and quietly blacklist her was not impulsive. It was deliberate. It was strategic. And it sent a message, not just to Meghan, but to Hollywood at large. Fame does not equate to influence, and even the most ambitious requests have limits. The emotional weight of this moment cannot be understated. Meghan left the meeting, reportedly calm on the surface, but internally grappling with disbelief. How could a polite, reasoned request for creative autonomy be met with such resistance? How could a career built on visibility, acclaim, and public admiration be quietly stymied in the corridors of power? This is the tension that drives the narrative, the emotional hook that keeps audiences engaged. Because we all understand ambition, aspiration, and the frustration of encountering walls we cannot simply climb over. And while this meeting may have seemed like the beginning, it was, in reality, only the first chapter of a dramatic unfolding. Insiders hint that emails were circulated afterward, discussions held in private corners of the studio, and strategic decisions made that would ripple through Hollywood in the months to come. The blacklist, invisible yet potent, was taking effect, and the repercussions would be felt in ways Meghan could not yet predict. She doesn't need a spotlight. She doesn't need headlines. Yet her influence in Hollywood is absolute. Jennifer Sock is a name that strikes a unique mix of admiration and fear across the entertainment industry. If you're a rising star or an established celebrity hoping to secure a golden opportunity at Amazon MGM Studios, Sock is the gatekeeper. And when Meghan Markle walked into her office, she was stepping directly into the domain of a woman whose reputation for decisiveness is legendary. Imagine this. Decades of experience, countless projects greenlit, billions in box office revenue, and a reputation that precedes her wherever she goes. Sock has the uncanny ability to assess talent, vision, and intent in seconds, weighing ambition against feasibility, personality against strategy, and influence against precedent. For many, her calm exterior masks a mind constantly evaluating, predicting, and strategizing. She is a tactician, a visionary, and, for those who miscalculate her authority, an immovable wall. The mini-hook here is simple. Meghan Markle may have believed she understood Hollywood power, but Sock operates on a level entirely different. A level where fame, charisma, and past achievements mean nothing if they threaten the studio's integrity. In Hollywood terms, this isn't just a rejection. This is a strategic maneuver. Sock's decisions are rarely impulsive. They are deliberate, calculated, and sometimes ruthless. And when a celebrity crosses a line, even subtly, the consequences are immediate and often permanent. Sock's career trajectory explains why she wields such influence. She has been at the helm of major networks and studios, overseeing projects that define the industry. Under her leadership, Amazon MGM has expanded aggressively, attracting top talent while carefully curating the studio's image. She is known for balancing creative risk with business prudence, ensuring that every decision, whether public or private, aligns with long-term goals. Sock understands the fine line between nurturing talent and allowing chaos to destabilize a carefully constructed system. Now, consider what it means for someone like Meghan Markle to request free space within such a meticulously structured environment. Free space is not just office square footage. It's autonomy, authority, and influence. Essentially, the power to operate outside the usual oversight that governs studio projects. For Sock, this is a serious consideration. It's not about denying someone opportunity. It's about maintaining a system in which precedent, hierarchy, and control are preserved. Sok has seen what happens when celebrities bypass these boundaries, when ego meets untested authority. Careers can be made or destroyed, often in ways that ripple far beyond a single office. Insiders describe Sok as unflinching in meetings, a woman whose calm demeanor is often mistaken for acquiescence, but who listens carefully, assesses each word, and makes her judgment with precision. She has rejected pitches from renowned actors, turned down high-profile projects, and navigated controversies that would make other executives flinch. Her decisions are strategic, often preemptive, and always grounded in her understanding of what a studio can sustain without compromising its brand or operations. When Meghan stepped into this world, she was entering a domain that values subtlety, calculation, and long-term vision over immediate gratification. Sok's authority is rooted in both her track record and her approach to power. She does not act rashly, but when a decision must be made, she does so decisively. Consider the psychology at play. Meghan is ambitious, bold, and accustomed to influence. But Sok operates on a logic that is impersonal yet firm. Her decisions are informed by data, precedent, and a deep understanding of both market forces and internal studio dynamics. This is the unseen infrastructure of Hollywood, the gatekeepers, the decision-makers, the quiet architects of success and failure. And Meghan, despite her fame and public acclaim, is now subject to this structure. Her request for free space was not merely a professional pitch. It was a challenge to a system that has been carefully maintained, and Sok's response would reflect not only the immediate assessment of Meghan, but also the broader implications for the studio. The meeting itself, described by insiders, is emblematic of Sok's approach. She listens intently, allowing Meghan to present her case fully. She asks probing questions, not out of confrontation, but to assess vision, feasibility, and alignment with studio objectives. Every answer Meghan gives is weighed, every proposal examined through a lens of strategy and risk. Sok's team is discreet, taking notes, analyzing each aspect of the pitch, quietly ensuring that all variables are considered. By the time Meghan finishes, the decision is not made lightly, but it is already forming. And then, the subtle signs that Meghan would later recognize as critical: a measured pause, a carefully chosen word, a neutral tone that carries far more weight than a direct denial. For Sok, these gestures are not incidental, they are deliberate. They communicate boundaries without confrontation, authority without spectacle. It's a skill honed over years, where the balance of diplomacy and power is key. For Meghan, who may have expected negotiation or compromise, the impact is immediate and stark. Hollywood insiders explain that Sok's decisions are rarely personal. She does not reject based on ego, celebrity status, or media attention. She evaluates risk, precedent, and alignment. When she says no, it is informed by a deep understanding of long-term consequences. And in this case, Meghan's request for autonomy threatened both precedent and control, granting such space to a celebrity, even one as high-profile as Markle, could open the door for similar requests, potentially undermining studio operations, creative consistency, and brand integrity. Sok's rejection is therefore not only a defense of protocol, but also a strategic reinforcement of her authority and the studio's operational stability. Yet there is nuance here. Sok is not portrayed as villainous. She is decisive, yes, but her reputation reflects a commitment to strategic excellence and risk management. In Hollywood, where ego often trumps logic, her authority is both rare and respected. She recognizes talent, creativity, and ambition, but she also knows that unchecked ambition, no matter how dazzling, can be destructive. Meghan's pitch, bold and visionary, collided with Sok's disciplined structure, creating a tension that would have profound repercussions. After the meeting, sources report a flurry of activity behind the scenes. Emails circulated among senior executives, private conversations occurred in hallways and offices, and subtle signals were sent to other teams. The studio's message was clear: autonomy within Amazon MGM is earned, not demanded. The notion of free space for a celebrity, even one with Meghan's credentials, was not negotiable. The blacklist, though quiet and internal, had begun to take shape. And for Meghan, the implications would be immediate and far-reaching. The power dynamics at play are compelling because they reveal the collision between celebrity culture and institutional authority. Meghan is a figure accustomed to public attention, adoration, and influence. Sok is a woman whose influence is invisible but absolute within her domain. When these forces meet, the result is not a simple yes or no. It is a lesson in boundaries, a demonstration of systemic authority, and a subtle yet powerful exercise of control that could shape a career. And while Meghan may have expected negotiation, compromise, or even a cautious yes, Sok's approach ensured that the message was unequivocal. Fame and ambition alone do not grant access to power or influence. There are rules, there are boundaries, and there are consequences for overstepping. The mini cliffhanger at the end of this chapter is unavoidable. What Jennifer Sok did after the meeting, quietly and without fanfare, would set in motion a series of events that no one, not Meghan, not Hollywood, not even the public, could fully anticipate. Hollywood is a small world. Everyone talks, everyone watches, and no one forgets. When Meghan Markle's pitch to Amazon MGM Studios was quietly rejected, and when the subtler, more damning decision of blacklisting her was put into motion, the ripple effect spread fast. Insiders, agents, producers, and journalists all sensed the tremor. A celebrity of her stature, accustomed to doors opening at her name, had just faced one of the most shocking, invisible rejections in recent entertainment history. And in Hollywood, invisible rejections are often the most powerful. The mini hook is immediate. When the news first leaked, whispers in the hallways of studios and agencies were nearly palpable. "She's been blacklisted," one source reportedly muttered. No one is saying it publicly, but the signs are everywhere. Gossip, innuendo, and speculation are the lifeblood of Hollywood, and Meghan's situation became a lightning rod almost overnight. Unlike a public scandal, this was internal, quiet, and devastating precisely because it was subtle. Agents and managers began making discreet calls. "Have you heard about Meghan?" they asked each other in hushed tones. Deals previously in negotiation were suddenly frozen. Partners and projects that had been in early talks reportedly pulled back. The studio's network was operating efficiently, almost surgically, to ensure that the blacklist was more than just a rumor. It was becoming reality. Hollywood, notoriously competitive, thrives on visibility and access. Being denied that access, even without fanfare, is a career-altering event. For the executives and insiders who heard of the decision, the mood ranged from shock to vindication. Some admired Sok's decisiveness. Others worried about the potential backlash from the public and media. In a town where appearances matter as much as results, the quiet execution of such a decision is a delicate balancing act. How do you deny a celebrity without attracting scandal? How do you protect the studio while mitigating gossip? And how do you ensure that no precedent is set for future celebrities seeking similar privileges? Sok and her team managed this delicate operation with precision. Meanwhile, public-facing figures, actors, producers, and influencers who had worked with Meghan or had been loosely connected to her projects began to subtly shift their behavior. Invitations that might have once included her were quietly rescinded. Collaborative opportunities were delayed or redirected. It was not overt, but it was unmistakable. The message was clear. Meghan Markle was now operating outside the studio's favor, and Hollywood insiders quickly adjusted their calculations. The emotional impact on Meghan cannot be overstated. She had built her post-royal career on visibility, influence, and strategic relationships. Every pitch, every project, every handshake had been part of a meticulously constructed plan to carve out her space in Hollywood. And now, one meeting, one expertly managed and quietly enforced rejection, threatened to upend it. The fallout was more than professional, it was personal. The industry she thought she understood had drawn a line she could not cross. Insiders recount that social media began to catch wind of the situation within hours, even if the specifics were murky. Analysts and commentators speculated, sometimes inaccurately, about what had transpired. Headlines appeared with cautious language. Meghan Markle faces Hollywood roadblocks, or, sources say, Amazon MGM not moving forward with Markle projects. Though the details were intentionally vague, the tone suggested friction, tension, and a power struggle. Public opinion, always a volatile factor, began to swirl. Some fans expressed outrage at perceived industry elitism, while others wondered whether Markle had overreached. The irony of the situation is stark. Meghan, a figure accustomed to commanding attention, controlling narratives, and shaping public perception, found herself on the receiving end of a narrative she could not influence. The industry that she had carefully navigated for years, built on media appearances, public relations, and strategic networking, suddenly operated independently of her control. This is the essence of Hollywood power. It is not always public, it is not always visible, but it is omnipresent. One particularly telling account from a studio insider reveals the tension perfectly. A group of executives reportedly convened shortly after the meeting, discussing the implications of Meghan's request. They analyzed the risk, debated potential public perception, and strategized on how to handle internal leaks. Every word spoken reflected a deep understanding of Hollywood's ecosystem: perception, authority, precedent, and long-term strategy. Meghan's pitch, which she had approached with confidence and boldness, was now a case study in risk assessment. The ripple effects extended beyond Amazon MGM studios. Other studios and production companies reportedly began reevaluating potential collaborations. Agents warned clients about potential reputational risks, and some projects that had been slated to include Meghan were quietly reassessed. In Hollywood, the perception of influence is just as powerful as the influence itself. When insiders sense that someone has been denied access at the highest levels, the message spreads, often faster than any official announcement. Meanwhile, the emotional narrative intensified. For Meghan, the rejection was a stark reminder that fame does not automatically translate to industry power. It was a lesson in authority, hierarchy, and the quiet rules that govern one of the most competitive fields in the world. For Hollywood observers, the story offered a glimpse behind the velvet curtain. A reminder that even celebrities who seem untouchable are still subject to the unseen forces of gatekeepers, executives, and institutional authority. Yet the fallout was not entirely bleak for Meghan. Sources suggest that her team immediately strategized a response. Private calls were made, attempts to salvage relationships initiated, and contingency plans considered. But even with swift action, the shadow of the blacklist loomed large. In Hollywood, timing is everything. A delay of even a few weeks can ripple through project pipelines, marketing plans, and casting schedules. The rejection, while private, had already begun to disrupt the carefully orchestrated timeline of Meghan's career ambitions. Humor and irony are unavoidable in this chapter. The very celebrity who once captivated public attention with royal poise now faced quiet exclusion in a world she believed she understood. Colleagues reportedly joked about the audacity of requesting free space in a studio where even seasoned producers struggle to gain approval for their ideas. Social media memes and subtle commentary circulated among Hollywood circles, blending admiration, incredulity, and mild ridicule. The stakes were high, but the spectacle was equally dramatic. The most significant impact of the fallout, however, lies in the industry's perception of power. Meghan's experience became a cautionary tale. No matter how high profile, no matter how well-connected, no one is exempt from the rules that govern elite institutions. Hollywood, like any hierarchical ecosystem, enforces boundaries, and SOC's decision was a masterclass in subtle authority. The ripple effects, projects delayed, collaborations reconsidered, opportunities quietly withdrawn, illustrate the power of discretion, strategy, and institutional authority over fame alone. And yet, the story does not end there. While Meghan's public presence remained visible, her behind-the-scenes influence faced significant constraints. Meetings, projects, and pitches that once flowed smoothly encountered resistance. Executives who might have been willing collaborators hesitated. Agents who might have advocated found themselves weighing potential risk, and the industry itself began to recalibrate its approach to working with her. The fallout, invisible to most observers, was pervasive and impactful. The cliffhanger at the end of this chapter is inevitable. Just when it seemed that Meghan's ambitions were quietly stifled by the studio's authority, whispers emerged of a secret strategy being considered, a move that could either salvage her Hollywood trajectory or escalate the conflict to unprecedented levels. She thought she had Hollywood figured out. After all, Meghan Markle had spent years navigating complex systems, first the royal world, then media, then the entertainment industry. She understood optics, influence, and the art of perception. Every public appearance, every interview, every project she touched had been part of a carefully orchestrated plan to cement her brand as a global influencer and creative force. But even the most meticulously crafted strategies can falter when they meet an immovable wall, and that wall, in this case, was Jennifer Sock and Amazon MGM Studios. The mini-hook is immediate. Meghan's strategy was bold, audacious, and designed to ensure she controlled her creative destiny. But boldness in Hollywood is a double-edged sword. You can either carve a new path to fame, or you can trigger resistance so strong it threatens to derail everything. Behind closed doors, Meghan's team had spent weeks preparing her pitch. They analyzed Amazon MGM's portfolio, researched past productions, and studied the studio's hierarchy. Her vision was not simply to produce content. It was to establish herself as a producer with authority, influence, and the creative freedom to choose her own projects. In her mind, it was logical. A former actress with global recognition, a loyal fan base, and proven storytelling instincts should be granted autonomy. What she may not have fully accounted for was the invisible calculus of studio politics, precedent, and control. Meghan's approach was strategic on multiple levels. She was aware of her own celebrity power and leveraged it to make the pitch appear mutually beneficial. Her team framed the request as a win-win. Meghan gains creative autonomy, and Amazon MGM benefits from her global reach and star power. They highlighted potential critical acclaim, projected revenue, and marketing synergy. Every point was backed by analysis, every proposal couched in professional language. But what they underestimated was the threshold for autonomy within the studio and how Sock interprets influence versus control. Part of Meghan's strategy relied on optics. She intended to present herself as approachable yet authoritative, confident yet collaborative. In theory, this was perfect, a celebrity who could both lead projects and work within a studio system. But as insiders would later describe, the room's response suggested that the optics alone were not enough. The message being conveyed was clear. Even the most polished persona could not bypass structural authority. Meghan's confidence, while admirable, may have been read as overreach. Moreover, Meghan's strategy included subtle pressure points. She hinted at her prior accomplishments, subtly emphasizing her global influence. She referenced her previous projects, philanthropic engagements, and media presence. She made indirect appeals to the studio's reputation, aligning her personal brand with Amazon MGM's ambition, suggesting that a partnership would be mutually advantageous. But there is a delicate balance in Hollywood between persuasion and provocation. Even well-intentioned strategic framing can be interpreted as audacious, presumptuous, or challenging to authority. Her team also prepared contingencies. They expected negotiations, possible compromises, and at least partial approval. In their calculations, Meghan's star power and media leverage would secure at least a partial green light. What they did not predict was the level of subtle resistance she would encounter, the quiet, unyielding authority of a gatekeeper who values precedent and control over celebrity. Sock's response was measured, calculated, and absolute, a rejection framed in professional language, but carrying the weight of institutional authority. The emotional weight of this moment cannot be overstated. Meghan, accustomed to command and influence, suddenly confronted the limits of her strategy. In public, she had navigated scrutiny, criticism, and power dynamics with grace. Behind closed doors, however, she faced a system impervious to celebrity, fame, or charisma. For someone who had meticulously constructed a path to creative authority, this was an unanticipated obstacle, and one that would have immediate consequences. Insiders describe her reaction as a mix of surprise and recalibration. Meghan reportedly tried to pivot mid-meeting, offering alternative solutions, compromise proposals, and assurances of alignment with studio standards. But each suggestion was met with polite resistance, measured responses, and the unyielding presence of Sock's authority. In that room, the dynamic shifted. Meghan's strategy, no matter how carefully prepared, encountered a reality she had underestimated. The irony of her strategy is striking. She approached the pitch with precision, leveraging data, optics, and influence. She framed the request as a mutually beneficial arrangement. She anticipated objections and prepared counters. And yet, the very elements that made her strategy compelling, her fame, her confidence, her media visibility, were precisely what triggered institutional resistance. SOC's office is a domain where precedent and control outweigh personality and public perception. Meghan's pitch inadvertently tested boundaries, and the response was swift, subtle, and decisive. Another aspect of Meghan's strategy involved timing. She believed that striking while her visibility was high, leveraging recent media coverage and global interest, would create leverage. She assumed that the studio would recognize the PR value of associating with her and would therefore accommodate her request. What she did not account for was the studio's prioritization of long-term control over short-term visibility. While the public might have viewed her as a rising creative force, internally, her request threatened structural norms and set a potentially disruptive precedent. Timing, while critical in media strategy, is secondary to authority in corporate structures, and this misalignment became painfully apparent during the pitch. Sources close to the meeting reveal subtle dynamics at play. As Meghan spoke, executives took notes not just on her proposal, but on her approach, demeanor, and tone. SOC listened carefully, analyzing whether this request aligned with the studio's operational framework. Was it feasible? Could it be managed without destabilizing existing hierarchies? What precedent would it set for future negotiations? These were not rhetorical questions. They were the calculus of power, carefully weighed by someone whose career is built on understanding risk and authority. Meghan's strategy also included appealing to perceived empathy. She referenced her personal journey, her experiences with public scrutiny, and her desire to create content with meaning and impact. She positioned herself as someone not only capable of producing compelling narratives, but also committed to storytelling that resonated with audiences on a human level. Yet, while compelling in theory, these appeals were secondary to the primary calculus of authority and precedent. Emotional resonance, while important in media, cannot override institutional governance, and this was a reality Meghan had not fully internalized. And there is yet another layer, the ripple effect of perception. Even if SOC had been inclined to negotiate or compromise, the presence of other executives, the need for internal alignment, and the broader implications for the studio's brand made deviation from precedent nearly impossible. Meghan's strategy, which relied on influence, optics, and subtle persuasion, collided with an immovable force, a system designed to enforce boundaries and ensure consistency. The human element is compelling. Meghan's ambition, vision, and carefully planned strategy met resistance not out of malice, but out of systemic logic. SOC's authority is grounded in a long history of navigating complex decisions, balancing creative opportunity against operational integrity, and ensuring that precedent does not undermine stability. Meghan's request, bold as it was, inadvertently challenged these principles. Her strategy, designed to secure autonomy, triggered the opposite, a quiet but firm reinforcement of studio control and the beginnings of a blacklist that would quietly redefine her Hollywood trajectory. This wasn't just a rejection. It wasn't a polite no, a soft letdown, or a suggestion to try again later. It was something far more severe, far more consequential, a decision that would silently but decisively reshape Meghan Markle's Hollywood trajectory. Amazon MGM Studios, under the watchful eye of Jennifer SOC, was quietly blacklisting her. And in Hollywood, a blacklist, subtle, internal, and invisible to the public, can be far more powerful than any public controversy. The mini-hook hits immediately. Imagine being a celebrity accustomed to influence, visibility, and doors opening at your name, only to discover that behind closed doors, those doors are firmly shut, and your request for autonomy has become the catalyst for a quiet but permanent exclusion. This is exactly what Meghan faced. Sources indicate that the decision was strategic, deliberate, and fully informed. Jennifer SOC and her senior team evaluated the pitch in depth, weighing potential benefits against risks. Every angle was considered: brand alignment, resource allocation, precedent, and studio culture. The verdict was clear: the request for free creative space, unprecedented in both scope and expectation, could not be accommodated. But more than that, the team recognized the potential ramifications if the request were granted. It could signal to other celebrities that autonomy within the studio was negotiable, that celebrity influence could override operational rules, and that the studio's authority could be quietly undermined. The blacklist, unlike a public rejection, is subtle but pervasive. It is a decision that quietly shifts opportunity, influence, and access. For Meghan, it meant that conversations about future projects were delayed, redirected, or quietly canceled. Executives who might have advocated for her were constrained, agents were cautioned, and internal communications subtly reinforced that her requests would not be prioritized. It was a controlled, precise operation designed to ensure that the studio's authority remained unchallenged and that precedent did not bend for even a high-profile figure. The emotional impact of this cannot be overstated. Meghan reportedly left the meeting calm on the surface, masking frustration, disbelief, and concern. For someone who had meticulously crafted her strategy, the quiet yet absolute rejection was a shock. Hollywood thrives on visibility and influence, yet this form of exclusion operates invisibly, quietly, and efficiently. It's the kind of professional blow that can take months or years to fully recover from, especially when the industry perceives that even attempting to challenge authority has consequences. The mechanics of the blacklist are fascinating. Unlike the dramatic, public blacklists of old Hollywood, this is subtle. Internal emails flagged her name in future project discussions. Calls to collaborators were redirected. Opportunities were quietly paused. And while no official announcement was made, the message was clear: Meghan Markle had crossed a line. Her request for free space, bold and audacious as it was, had triggered a response designed to reinforce the studio's hierarchy and ensure that no precedent was set. Industry insiders described the environment as tense and calculated. Executives met in private to discuss the implications, weighing public perception against internal control. Would news leak? Could the celebrity or her team attempt to circumvent authority? What message would this send to other high-profile figures in the industry? Every detail was considered, every potential ripple effect calculated. The blacklist was not a reaction to personal dislike. It was a strategic decision, grounded in authority, precedent, and risk management. Yet, despite the professionalism of the decision, the human drama is undeniable. Meghan Markle, accustomed to visibility and control, faced a force she could not see, hear, or fully understand. The rejection was not framed as a confrontation, but the consequences were profound. It affected relationships, negotiations, and even the perception of her reliability as a creative partner. Hollywood operates on both perception and influence. When insiders perceive a celebrity as constrained or blocked, that perception spreads, often faster than any public statement could. Sources indicate that the blacklist was implemented quietly but efficiently. Project leads were informed of the decision in subtle ways. Meetings that might have included Meghan were rescheduled or canceled. Agents were briefed discreetly, ensuring that the message was clear without creating public scandal. This is the hallmark of SOC's leadership: precision, discretion, and effectiveness. Blacklisting someone like Meghan Markle without a public incident requires subtlety, timing, and control, and every part of the process reflects her mastery of Hollywood power dynamics. The irony is sharp. Meghan, who had built a career on visibility, control, and strategic media manipulation, was now constrained by invisible authority. She had navigated the scrutiny of royal life, media attention, and public expectation, yet she faced a new kind of challenge, one that operated silently, yet with potentially career-altering consequences. The blacklist was a reminder that in Hollywood, authority is rarely public, but its effects are pervasive. Fame and influence can only go so far when confronted with structural control. And the stakes were not just professional, they were deeply personal. Sources close to Meghan suggest that she struggled to reconcile her ambition with the unexpected resistance. Her team worked tirelessly to craft alternative approaches, but the boundaries imposed by SOC and her team were firm. Every effort to negotiate, pivot, or circumvent the decision encountered resistance. What could have been a bold opportunity became a cautionary tale in real time. Even the most well-prepared strategy can falter when faced with authority that is calculated, disciplined, and unyielding. The fallout extended beyond the walls of Amazon MGM studios. Other studios, agents, and collaborators quickly picked up on the dynamics. Deals once in discussion were quietly reevaluated. Executives became cautious about associating too closely with Meghan's projects. The ripple effect was immediate. When a figure of SOC's authority signals disapproval, the industry responds. The blacklist, though silent, had far-reaching consequences, reshaping opportunities and perceptions across Hollywood. At the core of this decision is a lesson in power dynamics. Jennifer SOC did not need to make a spectacle. She did not need to confront Meghan publicly. Instead, she executed a quiet, strategic, and absolute exercise of authority. Hollywood insiders, even those accustomed to navigating celebrity egos, recognized the sophistication of the move. It was a subtle but unmistakable reminder that fame does not override institutional control, that influence is bounded by structure, and that ambition without alignment can trigger exclusion. The emotional intensity of the blacklist cannot be overstated. For Meghan, the realization that a single meeting could alter the trajectory of her career in such a profound way was a sobering experience. While she had anticipated negotiation, discussion, and perhaps compromise, what she faced instead was a silent but absolute barrier. The consequences of crossing invisible boundaries became starkly apparent. Opportunities delayed, collaboration stalled, and influence constrained. But the drama doesn't end there. The blacklist, while quiet, began to shape not only Meghan's immediate opportunities, but also her reputation in the industry. Insiders whisper about the ripple effects, hesitant collaborators, cautious agents, and delayed projects. Even for someone of Meghan's stature, the perception of being difficult or blocked carries weight. Hollywood is as much about perception as it is about talent, and the subtle enforcement of the blacklist ensures that the message is felt far beyond the walls of SOC's office. The mini cliffhanger at the end of this chapter is unmistakable. Just when it seemed that Meghan's ambitions had been quietly stifled, a series of strategic moves, both public and private, began to unfold. These moves would escalate the tension, challenge the authority of the blacklist, and trigger reactions that no one, not even Meghan herself, could fully predict. Hollywood thrives on attention, but when attention turns into speculation, gossip, and outright frenzy, even the most calculated careers can wobble. Meghan Markle, accustomed to navigating headlines and public scrutiny, now faced a new dimension of challenge. The media storm that erupted in the wake of her quiet blacklist at Amazon MGM studios. Unlike the subtle maneuvering behind closed doors, the media operates publicly, indiscriminately, and with a voracious appetite for drama. And Meghan's story provided everything it needed: fame, ambition, power, and conflict. The mini-hook hits immediately. Imagine being at the center of a storm you didn't see coming. A storm generated not by your actions directly, but by a system quietly asserting authority and the insatiable curiosity of an industry that thrives on spectacle. That was Meghan's reality. Within hours of insider whispers circulating, journalists, bloggers, and entertainment reporters picked up fragments of the story. Sources say Meghan Markle faces Hollywood roadblocks, read early headlines. Amazon MGM reportedly pushes back on Markle projects. The language was deliberately cautious, hedged with sources and reportedly, but the implication was unmistakable. Meghan's ambitions were meeting resistance, and the industry was taking note. Social media, as always, amplified every nuance. Tweets speculated about her professional credibility. Instagram commentary debated the implications. TikTok videos dramatized the story, framing Meghan as either a victim of corporate elitism or a celebrity who had overstepped her bounds. Memes emerged overnight, some highlighting her ambition, others mocking the audacity of requesting free space within one of Hollywood's most powerful studios. The storm was global, instantaneous, and relentless. The emotional stakes were intense. Meghan, a figure used to shaping narratives through calculated media appearances, now found herself reacting to speculation rather than controlling it. Her public persona, carefully curated, strategically managed, was being reframed through the lens of rumor and interpretation. The subtle blacklist, invisible in execution, had now collided with the uncontainable force of public discourse. And Hollywood, ever hungry for drama, responded in kind. Inside the industry, reactions were mixed. Some executives admired Sock's decisiveness, seeing the enforcement of boundaries as a masterclass in authority. Others worried about the potential public perception. Could denying a celebrity of Meghan's stature create backlash? Would the story leak further, destabilizing other deals and partnerships? These considerations added layers of complexity to the fallout. Every executive, agent, and studio insider had to weigh the implications carefully. Meanwhile, Meghan's team scrambled to manage the narrative. Private calls were made, clarifications requested, and damage control strategies deployed. Every public statement was scrutinized, every interview prepared meticulously to counter speculation. But in Hollywood, the media storm moves faster than even the most prepared teams can respond. The combination of curiosity, gossip, and celebrity intrigue proved overwhelming, creating a narrative that was part fact, part conjecture, and entirely compelling for public consumption. Irony played a significant role in this chapter of the story. Meghan, who had leveraged media attention for years, was now at its mercy. The tools she had mastered, strategic communication, visual branding, and public relations, were suddenly insufficient to navigate the complex interplay between studio politics and public perception. The very mechanisms she used to amplify her influence now magnified the consequences of the rejection. The storm also highlighted the contrast between public visibility and private authority. While the media speculated, Amazon MGM operated quietly but decisively behind the scenes. Emails were circulated internally, executives were briefed, and collaborative opportunities were subtly reassessed. The blacklist, though invisible to the public, was reinforced by the attention the media storm generated. In essence, speculation and gossip became tools of containment, further limiting Meghan's access to opportunities within the studio. Analysts noted the speed and intensity of the media reaction. Within hours, entertainment networks began covering the story, often focusing on the sensational rather than the factual. Headlines suggested conflict, power struggle, and professional setback. Public perception began to shift, with some audiences sympathizing with Meghan while others questioned her approach, ambition, and judgment. The storm was a double-edged sword. Visibility was maintained, but influence and opportunity were simultaneously constrained. For Meghan, the emotional impact was compounded by the inevitability of public scrutiny. Every move, every response, every attempt at strategic management was analyzed, critiqued, and dissected. Insiders report that she was aware of the narrative unfolding, but controlling it proved almost impossible. Hollywood, as ever, operates with a momentum of its own. Once a story is in motion, it gathers energy, evolving beyond the control of any individual, even someone of Meghan's celebrity caliber. Humor and irony intertwined with tension. The very celebrity who once commanded headlines for royal appearances and advocacy work now found herself at the mercy of whispers and speculation. Memes and social media commentary ranged from playful to harsh, emphasizing the absurdity, audacity, or even perceived entitlement of the request she had made. While the stakes were high, the spectacle was unavoidable, and the storm continued to build, feeding on curiosity and drama. Within the studio, executives watched the unfolding coverage with interest and caution. The media storm amplified the internal enforcement of the blacklist, providing an indirect yet effective reinforcement of boundaries. If the public perceived friction, hesitation, or dispute, the studio's decision to limit Meghan's opportunities appeared more justifiable. In effect, the media storm, though initially unpredictable, became a tool in the quiet orchestration of influence and authority. Yet the emotional stakes for Meghan were profound. Public scrutiny, when combined with the quiet consequences of the blacklist, created a pressure cooker environment. Every planned project, every potential collaboration, now had to be navigated with extreme care. Decisions that once might have seemed simple or straightforward were complicated by perception, rumor, and the invisible barriers constructed by authority figures like Sock. Sources describe intense private discussions within Meghan's team. Strategic meetings, contingency planning, and public relations efforts became the order of the day. Every potential opportunity had to be re-evaluated in light of the blackout on access to Amazon MGM's resources. Agents reached out to alternative studios, attempted to secure private endorsements, and explored potential partnerships, all while trying to manage the narrative publicly. The storm, while external, had tangible operational consequences, shaping decisions behind closed doors. Irony deepened when media outlets began framing Meghan's ambition as audacious or even reckless. While her pitch had been grounded in strategy, vision, and preparation, the perception among some commentators painted her as overreaching. This contrast between intention and perception underscores one of Hollywood's harshest realities. The difference between private action and public interpretation can be stark and often unforgiving. The stakes escalated further as insiders reported leaks of emails and private messages hinting at the internal conflict. While no names were publicly disclosed, Hollywood gossip quickly connected the dots. Speculation about Sauk's role, Meghan's intentions, and the potential consequences spread rapidly. The media storm, initially focused on curiosity and sensationalism, now carried implications that could influence professional relationships, future opportunities, and even public perception of Meghan's reliability as a collaborator. And as the storm continued to rage, it became clear that the situation was more than a professional setback. It was a cautionary tale. Ambition, visibility, and public acclaim, no matter how carefully leveraged, can collide violently with authority, precedent, and strategic control. Meghan, for all her preparation and foresight, now faced a challenge that tested not just her career ambitions, but her ability to navigate the unforgiving intersection of celebrity and corporate authority. In Hollywood, the drama behind the cameras is often far more intense than what the public sees on screen. While Meghan Markle was grappling with the implications of her quiet blacklist and the media storm it had ignited, another battle was unfolding, one hidden behind the gleaming doors of Amazon MGM Studios. A power struggle, internal, strategic, and ruthless, was shaping how the studio would manage not just Meghan's ambitions, but the broader message her request had triggered. The mini-hook is immediate. Imagine an empire where authority is absolute, but consensus is required, where decisions are swift yet deliberated in secret, and where one ambitious celebrity's request can ignite a web of alliances.